Sorry, no music this time. I'm kind of not feeling up to it. A couple of different things have, well, happened. The most obvious is the one that's on the screen now. A little over 3 years ago, for a Christmas gift, uh, relatives bought me Drop AK Racing's collaboration gaming chair, and it's kind of been it's been my chair for all those past 3 years, and I liked it. I really did. I kind of stripped it of the adjustable lumbar pillow and the adjustable neck brace. But it served me well. The seat was comfortable. It was good to relax in. Um, but as painfully obvious, emphasis on painfully, uh, it reached a failure point and dumped my rear end on the floor the hard way in between a desk. So I've kind of got multiple contusions on the leg. Still running icy hot down. Was not a fun experience. And okay, I guess on the technical side, the frame itself is actually bent internally. Probably just combination of years of leaning back in it. It just reached a point of failure. Even if I rip all of the fabric off and re-straighten the frame underneath, it's definitely undergone some metal fatigue. It's probably never going to be able to take the kinetic impact that I can impart onto a chair again, which is vastly disappointing, to say the least. And this kind of has been complicated. Uh, well, there, there's an obvious problem. The seat cushion or arm rest on the right hand side of the chair that actually broke off a long while ago, and since that was the part of the because of the way I have my desk set up, the way the mouse is set up, my arm actually rests on the desk with the mouse pad, so I really didn't care about losing the armrest. Uh, it's just another thing where, okay, yeah, if I take the time, effort, whatever, to try and put this back together and make it usable by a standardized definition of usable, uh, mm, it's probably not going to last very long, and it's probably never going to sit comfortably again. It's atrociously warped now. All right, so what I really wanted to replace it with, and something I've been looking at for a while, is Secret Labs Titan Chair, which is rated for a kinetic impact of a 200 plus pound person sitting in it and leaning back. But the Secret Labs Titan chair that I want is around 580, near enough $600. And that's kind of a little expensive for right now. It's a lot expensive for right now. But obviously, I've tried just sitting upright in this chair the past couple of days, and wasn't happening. All right, so I'm in Costco getting my normal allotment of Propel water, and Costco has this DPS gaming chair for 160. So under a third of the cost of the chair that I actually want. They also had one set up for you to sit down in and uh, well, try it out. Well, I don't have $500 plus to spend on a gaming chair. Not willing to take out that much credit, and well, until something changes status wise. But $160 was, well, doable. So I obviously, from the box, got the Costco chair. And how does it feel? It's a chair. I, my butt fits in it. I'm not falling over. I'm not having to sit ramrod bolt up straight with nothing to support my back. Not having to look at whalebone corsets. So it's not bad. Uh, I really don't really have that much to say about it since I've only had it for a few hours now. Uh, this chair does have a adjustable, movable lumbar support that is supposed to move with you, so it kind of is on an feels like a ball access, so it moves from side to side, it moves back and forth, it tilts one way or the other, and it's an interesting feeling when you're sitting in a chair moving around because if you're leaning forward, you're sitting upright, you've got your head back against the headrest, and yeah, I'm doing all of these things as I'm saying it, even though you can't see me doing it. It's not bad. I mean, I didn't have to move the headrest up any. I kind of wish that I could have reused the lumbar and neck support from the Drop AK racing chair, but I'll hold on to those just in case there's a chair in the future I can use them on, which probably will. All right, real okay. Kind of the big question is how much did the Drop AK racing chair cost? Well, it was uh, roughly speaking around $100 a year from the time I got it to the time it just cracked down on me. So should give you an idea of just about how much it cost, about how long it would last. Do I expect the Costco chair to last as long? Well, honestly, no. Costco chair is significantly less expensive. But that being said, since I am the one who put the Costco chair together, the metal frame is interestingly braced. Uh, and I say interestingly in that the actual chair support, the way the chair back support and the way the chair itself support, the way these screws go together, they go together in kind of an interlocking fashion. The Costco chair also has wires for the uh, pedals on the side to adjust the up and down position or to adjust the back position. Not sure, I think that's something that just saves on cost, maybe doing tension wires, more like a bike frame, than the stick controls most people are probably familiar with in setting up. Uh, it little different changes how things are routed. Uh, I I know how much kinetic force I can impart into a chair, enough to destroy it. Absolutely, positively destroy it. Uh, but the Costco with the that movable lumbar support, it does absorb kinetic impact a little bit more gracefully. So there is that to it. If the Costco chair at least lasts me a year, and then I'm in a position to buy a chair that I actually want, that's actually rated for the amount of force that I can put on a chair, and this is something where you start going into mechanical stress limitations, metal fatigue, and you start looking at wear over time, and you start looking at the maximum amount of forces measured in G's, or in gravity, or in Newton, or in newtons per ton, or some other measurement of force acceleration. How much can the frame successfully stop? The Costco chair feels over-engineered. The width of the steel on the frame, the size of the bolt, the size of the screws, they all seem a lot oversized for the price point. That being said, I understand how Costco as a company works. Costco does a lot of white box branding. They go to somebody else, somebody who makes something. Let's pick on my chair for a second, my new chair for a second. They went to these guys, Innovation Technology something, and they say, look, you sell your chair for $250. We'll guarantee 500,000 units in our warehouses sold before December if we can sell them at $160. And okay, you get less money per chair. You may like only make $5 profit per chair rather than uh, 15 or $20 per chair. But if you're the manufacturer, you're now not having to worry about the logistics of shipping because Costco is handling it for you. You're not having to worry about the logistics of warehousing because Costco is handling it for you. You're not having to worry about whether or not you'll have leftover unsold inventory because Costco is pitching the price low enough where people who walk by and look and go, I really could use a new chair, or I'm going to do more damage to myself not getting a new chair than I am trying to make the chair I just destroyed work. And that's where I really wound up is I'm going to do more damage to my back trying to cushion the chair or use pillows or something or blankets to pad out and make it at least livable until I can afford a chair that I want. Didn't wasn't really looking to get a low end gaming chair, but now that I'm sitting in it, now that I'm feeling it, the Costco chair really feels more. And again, I was the one who put this together. It really feels more like a 250 $300 chair. And there's a couple. I'm going to pick on somebody else here for a second. Razer just announced a gaming chair of their own. Now, if you take the AK racing chair and hold it up right next to the Razer chair, they look identical. Now, my suspicion is that Razer has just rebranded an AK racing chair. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I really loved my AK racing chair. The collaboration with Drop was great. It was a great chair for a reasonable price when it was bought for me. And I'm kind of dreading this Christmas when the relatives in question, how's your chair doing? Go, yeah, I broke it. And the resulting, how did you break it? I sat in it. How did you break it? By sitting in it? I weigh. Yeah, I'm not really looking forward to that particular conversation. Really not. Uh, but anyway, so I get the mechanics of how Costco as a corporation works, how they pitch the prices, how they set the prices. They've probably got an entire team of people who are calculating the if we sell it for this price, you may find a better deal elsewhere, but you're going to spend more time and money looking for that better deal than just getting it now. And this has happened enough times in the past where, okay, it's $160. It's probably below the price point where I think I would rather have been, but it definitely is over engineered for that price point. It feels really well. Maybe some stitching might not quite be up to where you might expect it to be, but I'm fairly sure a generic gaming chair cover will fit over this, and that removes some of the questions of accidentally ripping a stitch out. I'm not too thrilled with the armrest. These are padded. I've had a padded armrest chair before. I really like the AK Racing with the flat plastic armrest because if you're shoving this under a desk and you've got any kind of metal extrusion, those metal extrusions, or say a cat, will quickly rip your soft armrests apart. At some point, I may go take uh, the chair I had before the AK racing chair is. I know where it's at, and I can go take some pictures of it. It's obviously seen as wear and tear, but it is a cat's favorite chair, so it hasn't left its current location. Where it basically got stuck when I need to put this chair aside for a while. Uh, Maybe we'll get some pictures of that. Anyway, so that's kind of what's been going on with me is after a few minutes of trying to sit in the broken AK racing chair, I'm just uh, I hurt too much. I'm not going to sit here and do a stream. Uh, and there's other things been going on, and I'm not sure how much I can talk about this. Uh, One of the City of Heroes community members was assaulted in a CVS parking lot, put into the hospital, at least two fractured ribs. Uh, that's pretty much all I think I can safely say right now. Uh, Apparently, the person is out of surgery. They are doing well. Uh, but that kind of been another concern that's going on in the background. If you're listening to this and you're the kind of person who does prayer lists and uh, just put assault victim on your prayer list, and hopefully the player will make a full recovery. Uh, and yeah, there's someone I've played with a lot, and that is kind of shattering when you text somebody and the response you get back is, "Yeah, I'm the neighbor. They're currently in surgery." Not exactly a pleasant sensation, but that's something else that uh, it probably fits under the Carnage umbrella. Also, because of tight finances right now, yeah, I haven't made any progress on the rebuilding the Intel i7 920 or putting the media server back together. Uh, just again, until something else status wise changes, not really going to do anything on that front. On the ticked off Southern Sledgehammer front, since the new power supply went in, I've had a lot less hard crashes with graphics applications on our R9290X. So run your own theories about here. It was the power supply malfunctioning. Well, I now know that the power supply malfunctioned, so I don't trust the hardware that much. Uh, so I'm still kind of on the lookout. And it kind of also brings me not so neatly onto Intel's Alder Lake, or however they're pronouncing it now. And okay, I'm no big fan of Intel marketing. And I'm a very big proponent of put up or shut up. And AMD with the Ryzen processors have been putting up. They keep cranking out processors that are really good across a wide range of tasks, and their semi custom designs are doing even better at a much narrower range of tasks. Intel adopted, now if you don't know, in Alder Lake, Intel adopted the ARM processor format, big dot little processing schema, where you have a couple of big cores and you have a couple of smaller cores, and depending on whatever you're doing, your processing application either uses small cores or the big cores. Now, this makes fantastic sense in the mobile market, where for a lot of the time on a laptop or on a cell phone or a tablet, you are going to be spending a lot of time just browsing a web page and looking at simplistic interfaces. You're not really doing anything intensive for the most part. Uh, so having cores that only sip 1 or 2 watts and can pull off the performance that you need to do those casual tasks, hey, really good thing. But if you want to do something more, you want to crank up a game, you want to record some video, you want to do some image manipulation, you want to get that perfect image shot, you want to take a panorama, you want to do something that's more than just endlessly, as Apple puts it, endlessly scrolling. You really want those big cores. And the Linux systems have taken a long time to optimize the thread scheduling, especially in respect to desktop Linux and Android, to better make use of an application going back and forth between two cores with different wattages. Microsoft hasn't really had that kind of optimization in the NT kernel, and even Microsoft has admitted this when they got busted using using a Linux kernel on their Windows 10 on ARM Surface devices when it got shown off, and I'm almost fairly confident saying this. Let's see if I can punch in a uh, input here because it may be up and operational, and I've kind of been leading to this. All right, we'll do. I want. There we go. We're currently looking at my laptop, what it's doing right now. You can see something else that I've kind of gotten hooked on recently. Well, not so recently as ever since Epic put it out for free, and as Idle Champions now. This is probably going to get its own video, in which I'll talk about why I like this AFK game. And obviously, I'm watching the CNE Games Twitch stream. And you can also see, some of the YouTube videos I got going on in the background. You can also see I'm using Windows 11. Now, I don't have any specific kind of data or information to bring out. You can see here we do have a little bit more information on what system we're using. And you can also, the Aspire, this is an A15 1543. Yes, Nori is a reference to cracking the cryptic. I can't help but hear Simon going Nori, 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 Nori. Uh, but as we go through, and I'm going to see if I can actually find it in here. Maybe we're looking under system. We're looking under device specifications. And what I'm actually looking for here is, do we have any specific information on the kernel? And that's kind of an important bit of information to be aware of. Because I'm no longer convinced that Windows 11 is using an NT kernel. From the way the storage is being handled, from the way imports and exports are being handled, everything seems to be going through the WoW64, the Windows on Windows interface for sandboxing. But if you've extrapolated everything away in sandboxing, and let's see if we can bring up Task Manager. And we'll bring this up. And we'll do more details. And we'll bring this up. And we kind of look through here. We've got that Cortana going on. And we see host process for Windows task. That's interesting. All right. And what I'm kind of just looking through here is how things are wrapped around each other, looking at the Windows processes. And I think this is a very valid question to be posed of Microsoft, especially looking at the services, the update services, the startup, the session manager itself, looking at some of these applications, how the background of the operating system works, how it performs, how it's scaling, and especially considering Microsoft's insistence that Alder Lake needs Windows 11. Are we really sure that Microsoft is still using an NT kernel on Windows 11? Did Microsoft just use a Windows update to swap the NT kernel for a Linux kernel? The Azure Linux kernel that's possibly being used in the Xbox Series XS? And just a question out here. Hey, if you've gotten your operating system sandboxing to a point where you can run it on entirely different computing architectures, you can go from x86 to ARM, and uh, you're using that to extrapolate everything away, and you're extrapolating the drivers away as well. Are we really sure that Windows 11 is still running Windows NT? Okay, and the other reason, what prompted this train of thought to begin with is most of the time when Microsoft does an update, a new version of Windows, there's normally a big promotion about the new benefits of the new kernel, everything that's changed, everything that's targeted at developers. Can anybody think of something like that that's happened with Windows 11? Where's the big developer push? Where's the big, these are our new kernel features? Where's the, these are our new improvements? Well, if you swapped kernels, and now you're running everything that the Windows native development environments are now built to uh, accommodate for the extrapolation of exposed APIs and APIs rather than writing direct or loading direct. What if all that was changed? What if you're using a translation layer on the background and it's good enough to go into full production? Yeah, uh, I realize this is going off on a deep end here, a whole conspiracy theory of what Microsoft could be doing, but I think it's a very valid question to ask, especially in light of Alder Lake. Alder Lake, as a big dot little inspired architecture with some high intensity cores and low intensity cores, is never going to work well on Windows NT. It just isn't. Windows NT as a kernel was never created with that kind of scheduling in mind. That the whole reason we saw Microsoft using a Linux kernel uh, on the server devices and why that quickly got buried, renamed, shoveled away, and now it's very difficult to just break that kernel information out. And at this point, we really don't know. Is Xbox Series XX using a Linux kernel or Windows kernel? Are the service devices on ARM, Windows 10 on ARM, or are they using a Linux kernel or Windows kernel? Looking at Alder Lake and looking at how Alder Lake depends on the operating system to do the scaling across the different cores, I'd say that's a very strong evidence weighted towards Windows 11 is not using the NT kernel anymore. I think Microsoft has made the switch internally, and now they're building Windows using a Linux system that's running their interpretation layer for Linux rather than running the NT core. And if that's what really has happened, it's astoundingly big news. But why wouldn't you advertise it? I can think of several different legal reasons why Microsoft wouldn't advertise it. Not to mention a several decades worth of bad customer opinion. This is not something where, and if it crashes and burns, or there's even a double possibility here that Windows 11 is using two kernels at once, is using both a Linux kernel and it's using an NT kernel as a fallback. And your application is shifted to whichever one is needed at that moment by the translation layer, the WoW64, the Windows on Windows 64 processes. So big questions there to be answered, and that kind of, I think, is why Intel has been so bullish on Outer Lake's performance, even though that performance has been suspect at best. We do know that Intel, when it gave its original benchmarks, it compared it to AMD systems that the full specifications of those comparisons were not unveiled. Case in point, the AMD system was using less than half the wattage of the Outer Lake comparison. That just looks bad, and there's no way Intel can walk that one back. And Intel may be highly reliant on the abilities, the hard pedal to the metal testing of the big dot little ARM architecture, of the scheduling of the Linux kernel that's been optimized to handle those shifts and loads. They're relying on that for great performance in Windows 11. But if Microsoft's not being open about which kernel they're actually using, if they're, or even let's say the dual kernel theory is the worst case scenario, where depending on your application, it could use the Windows Linux kernel or it could use the Windows NT kernel. Uh, we're going to see very different performance scenarios for the Outer Lake processors in the real world. We're probably not ever going to see the performance that internally Intel is getting. And we're already seeing possibly the same thing with the ARC GPUs. We're already seeing ARC GPUs being referenced in the Mesa commits and the Intel open source technology driver packages, the graphic card packages. If Intel is optimizing for a Linux kernel and Vulkan rendering, which Windows generally is not optimized for, and that's where they're committing their development resources to, then relying on a performance basis that may not be represented in shipping Windows devices. This this leads back into my theory. We're probably going to see Intel offer at a competitive price and equivalent to the AMD Steam Deck. We're going to see an Intel version because it's going to be able to take advantage of all the driver work and all of the scheduling work that Intel has already done. And in a device like the Steam Deck, the outer leg, big dot little reminiscent architecture is probably going to be a big deal because you could realistically have 8 big hyper threaded big cores and maybe 2 or 3 small non hyper threaded cores. And under the Linux kernel being used openly in the Steam Deck, the Intel performance scaling between those two different cores would be phenomenal. It, it it would be exactly the same kind of performance scaling that you get on a modern Android platform when you go from battery life browsing a web page to flick on your favorite 3D game and off you go. Uh, so questions here remain as to how has Intel actually envisioned their processor being used for? What software basis did they predicate the performance on? I'm not going to go full semi-accurate and say that Intel was full of it uh, when they started promoting, because everyone wants to promote best case scenarios, and but the best case scenarios Intel actually had in house may not have been the best case scenarios Intel had outside. Uh, and again, this kind of I realize it went way away from the broken chair here, but uh, that just is something to keep in mind. You know, if you're building a computer today and you can somehow source parts, there is no explicit end user evidence to suggest that outside of a Linux environment with the mature processor scheduling that the outer lake processors are going to offer you any better or superior overall performance compared to an AMD processor of equivalent price. Again, assuming you were paying MSRP. Intel has an incentive to get their processors on market at MSRP, and if you can get an Intel processor that may be underperforming the equivalent AMD processor at MSRP, but the AMD processor is currently costing 3 times as much because of scalpers and hostile retailers, but you can get it direct from Intel or a close Intel partner who has to sell it to end user clients. Intel stands to make a lot of money there from people who need to update or need to replace aging broken equipment. And if you're in that position, just like my chair, it's not going to matter. It's like, yeah, I really want a $600 chair. I mean, I want something that's built to take the load I can put on it. But if I can't get the chair that I want because I can't afford it, but I need to replace something that's broken. I need it now, not next week, not next month. I'm going to do more damage to myself not having this. I'm just going to have to take the hit and go. Well, suddenly the Intel Outer Lake processors make a lot of sense, and we may see the same approach with the Intel GPUs. When they launch, they may not actually meet an RTX 3070 Titanium Edition. They may not actually compete with an RX 6600 Edition. They may not actually compete with a RX 5500 in the low end. I mean, we don't really know what that end user performance is going to be yet because we do know Intel it's kind of relying on Vulkan performance from their driver commits. Uh, Regardless of whatever they're saying about one API, they're real. Let's break it down. They're really talking about Vulkan, and they're really talking about translating Vulkan into DirectX and using a Vulkan to DirectX translator. That's really what it comes down to. Uh, so Intel performance on GPUs again, they may not actually meet the targets that they say they're going to meet. But if the Intel graphic card can be bought at MSRP in volume, they can be bought by realistic end users who get home from work, click open Intel site, see buy here, and then they buy from a party that has the processor in stock for that MSRP, then that end user is not going to care that maybe they're not getting the best value for money. Maybe they're not getting what the marketing says that they're getting, but they won't care because it's what they can get. And that's exactly coming back to the chair. Is I got the chair from Costco. wasn't the one I was looking for. It wasn't the one I had eyes on. It was the one I could afford today. And now sitting in it, I really don't care that, well, I didn't get the chair that I didn't want. This is good enough for now. It's going to last me for at least as long as I need it to last me. So let the good times roll. It's been another episode of Carnage. I'm Aurian Archive.